What's up, everybody? It is Friday afternoon out here on the West Coast. It's Friday evening out there on the East Coast. It could be Friday late evening if you're over there in Europe. It might even be Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. But no matter where you are, you know what time it is. It's time for the Cinema Crusaders. It's that show where we talk about older movies that we feel deserve to have a second look, or we talk about them in honor of different people. Last week, we talked about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, starring Paul Reubens, in honor of the late Paul Reubens, who recently passed away. We are continuing that tribute this week with another movie that he stars in. I'm talking about Mystery Men from 1999, in which he plays the spleen. But we will get into that in just a little bit. Before we get into all of the movie and start breaking it down, I need to introduce my fellow Cinema Crusader. So, first off, he is a man, he is a filmmaker, he is a writer, he is a comic creator, he is the owner of Warehouse 9 Pro. And you can check that out at warehouse9pro.com for all of your indie comics, independent movies, etc. He is a multi-talented man, a Renaissance man, none other than Lance Lucero. Hey, look at that.
Howdy, howdy.
The flaming carrot.
The flaming carrot with the eternal flame. The missing link to the movie. I will say it. Look at that. I've had this guy probably, 30 years. He was in a package for like 10 years, and then now he's been on my desk for several years. I mean, I'm a fan.
You know, and you're writing the comic, you have to have a villain ask him, why the long face flaming carrot or something like that. You know, it just writes itself. So
absolutely. The jokes are there.
All right. Next, I'm going to bring in an artist. He is known for Symbols of Liberty and Mr. Happy. He's also working for Raincross Press. He's a writer as well, the creator of a new character named Fellham, which you will be seeing soon. I'm talking about none other than Jeff Barresi. How you doing, Jeff?
Oh, I'm good. For those of you who aren't in the know out there, Mystery Men is linked by Lance's Flaming Carrot because they first popped up in Flaming Carrot comics as friends of the Flaming Carrot, the most D-list blue-collar superhero team ever. They are epic, and you got to respect the guy who wears a giant carrot and rides an atomic pogo stick. But today we'll be discussing Mystery Men.
See, I prefer mine more crustacean, like so Lobster Johnson. You know, that's my crazy stuff. But now we need Lobster Johnson. Lobster Johnson means flaming carrot. You know, so
I kind of like the homunculus myself.
Yes, that's good too. And last but not least, he is a writer, a comic creator. He is a wonderful podcaster, hosts Omen Comics Podcast Network and on Undercover Capes Podcast Network. He is the man behind such titles as Blitz for Omen, and he works for Omen and Revelation Comics, and he's doing a little bit of writing for me on Raincross Press as well. I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing all right. I will say I really never got into these characters, and I kind of regret now that I did. Although I will say, like watching this, I keep seeing like the lines of demarcation that kind of influence things like Hitman's Section 8. You know, those characters like the Defenestrator and things like that. And yeah, these guys are all the D-list loser characters that nobody really looks at. But they have a lot of heart, and so looking at these characters, I'm like, yeah, I got it. And while Paul Reubens certainly does a really great job, you know, you got to hand it to a lot of these other actors. Blue Raja's great. Ben Stiller is really good. Jeffrey Rush does his Jeffrey Rush thing and eats apples, you know, and he's great. And so yeah, there's really a lot to talk about, I think, with this movie.
I think William H. Macy is great, playing it straight in this movie.
Yep. Kinnear, I mean, what's his name? Kinnear.
Greg Kinnear, yeah.
Greg Kinnear was amazing.
He's basically what if Booster Gold really is the egotistical jerk that people think he is.
Yeah, really.
If Booster Gold made it big.
I think that all of us came at this movie from at different times in our lives and from different places. So I want to go around the horn real quick and get everybody's first impressions, and I'll start. I saw this movie in the theaters in 99. I think I was like the only one of maybe 5 people in the theater that saw it. I saw it like late at night. My wife wasn't interested. And I was one of those people that went and saw all of those superhero movies from the 90s that nobody went to see, as superhero genre was kind of dying. And this, unfortunately, was another one of those films. This came out, I believe it came out in the summer of '99. We talked a little bit about before where it was going up against the Blair Witch Project in a strong movie here as well. Lance brought that up. But I was shocked that this movie didn't do well. And for all of my nerd friends and I, this was a classic quotable movie. Whenever we were playing D&D, quotes that came out of this movie were second to none compared to all the other movies, which shows that it's a cult classic. You know, we talk about it constantly. I think the characters were there to really like. I even like Janine Garofalo in this movie, and I'm not the biggest fan of Janine Garofalo as a general rule, you know. And I thought she was wonderful in this movie because I think she played Janine Garofalo pretty much, but, you know, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I thought everybody was really amazing. I thought the story was great. And one of the best things in here is I think that all superhero movies need a great villain, a memorable villain that steals the show. Because when the villain steals the show, a superhero movie tends to do well, you know, or is enjoyable. Think of Nicholson and Batman as the Joker, etc. And I think Jeffrey Rush as Casanova Frankenstein is amazing in this movie. Although what Steve said about the apples is absolutely true, and now you're going back and watching every movie he's in.
It's like this is a first run at Barbosa.
Yeah. Some people are method actors. Jeffrey Rush appears to be an apple actor. You know, that's what he does. So.
He wants to keep the doctor away.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like of all of comicdom, that's probably my favorite supervillain name is Casanova Frankenstein. Just like it's so out there, it just sticks in your head like hot glue.
I will say this before I pass it on to Lance real quick, though, is that we're talking late 90s. I'm a big comic book fan. I'm going to everything that's going on. I've been into comics forever. I didn't know that this was a comic book property. I thought that this was an original story somebody had came up with, and I thought it was great. And I know that they later did some comics that translated directly to the movie, but they were really hard to come by, especially back in the day when we didn't have any comic shops out by us. You had to go to LA. So, I mean, you didn't find any of that stuff on spinner racks. And I think that was a missed opportunity as well, because if Dark Horse had said that this was coming from Flaming Carrot Comics and then re-released them, I would have bought them all up. So,
oh man, late 90s weren't too many spinner racks left anymore.
Right, they were dying. They were dead. They were gone. And
believe it or not, all the grocery stores out by us had the spinner racks. But
oh wow,
yeah,
so. They were long gone by that time down here.
Yeah, out here they were gone. The comic book shops we're still in pretty strong order, which I'm glad I'm from a very literary state, because we had comic book shops everywhere. We're very fortunate.
Out here in the IE, they didn't really disappear till 2002, and then the comic shops didn't really rise until 2006, 2007. So you had to go to Barnes and Noble for your comics for like a 5 or 6 year period. So
wow,
yeah. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Lance to talk about your experience with this movie, how you came into it, and what your feelings were. So
I was actually really surprised to hear that I was going to be turned into a feature film. I mean, I'm going back to the 80s. I'm going back to the mid 80s, knowing about, Cerebus, Flaming Carrot all the way, thinking, and this is the time, like this first printing, those are the days where they would print maybe 2,000 of them, and then they would go out to see if anybody cared. One printing is all you got if you were lucky. So this caught on to me, especially in that era of the late 80s, early 90s of those indie comics. Even back then, I started to kind of shy away from the DCs and what have you, and started looking at, Flaming Carrots, Cerebus, Lloyd Llewellyn, Ghost World, Madman, The Mask, Tank Girl, all these things that were like, okay, these are now off the beaten path, and I'm finding them a lot more entertaining, actually. A lot of the original titles had gotten tired by then. Even way back then, they had their 50-year run. Now we're going into their 80-plus year run. It's over with. So even back then, I was kind of starving for the new stuff, the off-the-wall crazy stuff. So I was really hyped to hear that this was going to be made into a feature film. Of course, didn't know anything about the director. other than he made commercials, Yo Quiero Taco Bell. I'm like, okay, is that a red flag, or is that is this going to be radical? Because Kinka Usher, I think that's the way you say his name.
Yeah.
He was of that school of Michael Bay, Anton Fuqua, Simon West, these commercial video directors that went into feature films. And if you remember, Michael Bay's in The Mystery Men. He's one of the frat boys. He's the leader of the frat boys.
Oh, damn! I can't believe I didn't realize that.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, they were all buds. They were
bud, can we take the beer? The brewskis, like that's him. Holy shit,
that's him. So, I thought, okay, this might be a good flick. Not realizing that when I actually went to see it and further research on the film, I'm like, well, where's the flaming carrot? He's the leader of the Mystery Men. What's going on here? Now, how is it the Mystery Men without the flaming carrot? So I still went and watched the movie in the theater. I mean, it was a riot. I was like, it always sticks in my mind. And it's a cult classic. It's something that I'll watch over and over again, even though I know it has its problems. It's far from perfection. Its art direction is spot on. The casting is spot on. The directing, it's not in many ways to me. The story was, I think, kind of haphazardly thrown together. I know there were issues, but the point is the source material was there. All they had to do was stick with the source material, and it would have been gold. But a fun movie overall that I will always recommend, despite its shortcomings. So going back to that era of the 90s, I was for it. I kind of hoped it would catch on. But like other independent transitions to the big screen, it failed. That's just life in the big city, I guess. What are you going to do?
Yeah. It's weird. We've talked about this before with other things. A lot of it is timing. I think that this movie had some timing issues, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well. So, but over to you, Jeff. Let's talk a little bit about your impressions of the movie and how you first came to it. So,
my journey was not unlike Lance's. In the 90s, with the loss of some of their big names, forming Image, Marvel trying to get into what in comics lingo we call the Dark Ages, where they try to be grim and gritty. Everybody was taking the wrong lessons from Alan Moore and Frank Miller, who were doing things like Watchmen and Dark Knight, and they kind of poisoned the well a little bit. And then of course there was the whole Clone Saga debacle that I've been a lifelong Spider-Man fan and a big Marvel fanboy, and that got me to drop the title for a few years. I was like, this is a mess. I don't want to. I'll come back when you guys figure things out. So I had started in the 80s looking at independent comics, things like Faust and Elementals, Rebel Studios, just a whole bunch of really cool books out there. And a lot of these books were black and white. And that's how I came across the Flaming Carrot. And then, of course, the Mystery Men. Now, the period that we're dealing with here is when the Mystery Men have gotten their own thing. That's because they went from Flaming Carrot Comics to Dark Horse Comics, and I think that's why we don't see the Flaming Carrot. Mike Richardson, who is the head honcho over there at Dark Horse, was pushing a lot of comic stuff into movies. He was doing his best Stan Lee to get stuff out there. We had Comics Greatest Universe put out the Barbed Wire. We had, of course, the Mask, which turned out to be great. We had Time Cop, which was really good. And he would produce a lot of these things and sometimes even write the scripts or work on the screenplays with the other writers for these things. So he was really, really involved in this stuff. And so, I got to hand it off to him for getting such an interesting thing put out there. And I love the film for, even with all its flaws, I thought visually it looked great. There was a lot of snappiness to it. This is Jeffrey Rush's first American feature, I believe, and he just goes for it. He has such a good time with it. The visual style feels very Tim Burton-esque in a lot of ways, and it's my understanding that they did actually recycle a lot of the Batman 89 sets to use in this. And you can see it, some of these sets just kind of dressed up for the Mystery Men, so it all works. It does have that Tim Burton kind of feel, but it's this little bit its own thing, and it's too bad the director didn't have a good time on the shoot trying to do what he did, but he did his best. He did his best, and one of the things he wanted to do was he wanted to make it a little bit more character driven. He thought the story was okay, but he wanted more character stuff, and I think he succeeded on a lot of levels there. And it's a shame that he decided working in the big studio system was not for him, because I think he had a lot of potential. If maybe this hadn't been his first film and he'd have got a chance to do a project that suited him a little better. It's like when you see Josh Trank get the Fantastic Four movie, and they took an indie guy and threw him in this big budget production, and he got chewed up and spit out the other side. I think that sort of happened here. But like Lance, I still love this film for what it is. It is still enjoyable after all these years. And I think right now, with everything that we see going on with the ridiculousness of the Marvel and the DC movies, especially the Marvel movies, this film is incredibly relevant. If you want to go see a movie that was actually meant to be funny, and it is funny, go check out Mystery Men.
Right. It's not
wacky Captain Marvel.
It's not a parody of its own characters. It is what it is.
I will also say that I think that the director did a good job, and the film production team did a good job bringing Champion City to life.
The art direction is amazing.
Art direction is stellar.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to see more of Champion City. I mean, so I think they did a good job with that, even as limited as they were in the 90s. I mean, because it's a little.
This was like
rough, but
I mean, this was a big studio production. Basically, it was a $66 million film, which was a lot back then, but unfortunately, only made about half that on release. Yeah,
it was a big time flop. So then on to our newcomer, who is just been exposed to Mystery Men. So I'm really interested to hear what
just been exposed to the spleen.
Yeah. So what did you think about
and Invisible Boy,
the Blue Raja, and Mr. Furious, and Invisible Boy, and the Bowler, and everybody else? So,
all right. My experience with Mystery Men coming in
was
kind of yeah, but there's a reason for that. The thing of it is like I was aware of Flaming Carrot comics. I never read it, but I was aware of it. I had actually, which is weird because I actually had read a ton of Cerebus and I never read Flaming Carrot. So yeah, it's just kind of weird. So it's like I completely get where you guys are coming from in terms of how you got into indie books and various things like that. Because I read some of those as well. It's just that Flaming Carrot was not on my radar at the time. And I didn't know the Mystery Men was connected to that. If I did, I might have actually watched it in the theaters. But as it was just like, I think I caught the sense that, okay, these guys are doing a comedy based on superheroes. And I think my fear at the time, just as somebody who didn't know anything and about these characters or anything that they were doing was, okay, they are making fun of superheroes because these are Hollywood people that don't know anything about superheroes making fun of them. I was wrong, and I am very, very glad to find that I was wrong. This is actually better than a lot of the type of stuff.
Or Love and Thunder.
Yes, yeah, because it is legitimately funny. You had some really good comedians, like when they actually were relatively new, relatively fresh, relatively young, and they brought a lot of that energy. People like Ben Stiller, really, really good in this movie. Janine Garofalo, who I'm not like her hugest fan, but I think she's very good in this movie. A lot of the people like Hank Azaria, who was still I think he was on The Simpsons and hadn't been on there that long.
One third of the cast of The Simpsons in one man.
Yeah. He's perfectly good in this, and all these characters are interesting. And not only that, they have heart and they have arcs. They change and they grow. And I also like, in a way, the one thing that the Flaming Carrot not being there allows them to do is subvert the tropes a little bit. Because you have Mr. Furious, who is Wolverine, who wants to be Cyclops. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's they don't know Cyclops until later in the movie, until the character steps up, and then they start to click in the story. So it's like I completely, as a fan of various comics and as somebody who tends to be a little on the purist side, wanting the source material to be respected. Totally get that. And I probably would be in the same boat if I had read the books. But I find that what I've seen of this movie, in terms of what I experienced, not having experienced it, I thought it worked perfectly well for what it was, regardless of those things. I don't need a
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great quote.
Exactly.
Exactly
So,
right,
I
Frank
think it
and
worked
Puss.
really well.
So
Yeah.
I will say the other thing that I think that they did incredibly well, and whoever the casting director was for this movie, I think did a great job, is that not only did they have good young comedic talent, they had an experienced hand in Paul Reubens coming on with comedic talent, but then the straight men they brought on were fantastic. William H. Macy is great, and so is Wes Studi. Who plays it straight the whole time, but he's hilarious playing.
I
it
mean,
straight.
you see this guy coming from Magua in
Yeah.
Last of the Mohicans to this. What a shocker that was for me. And he's brilliant.
Yeah.
He is an American Indian actor playing a Egyptian type of character. He's called the Sphinx.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he comes across like a Jedi master, speaking in riddles and
walking fortune cookie.
and it's hilarious.
Which is like the Sphinx, and it's known that he is a detective slash luchador in Iron City. He's a wrestler and a detective that moonlights as a busboy at a taco shop. I mean,
I could see Danny Trejo playing this character now.
And we'll go. We'll tackle those arcs of characters, because to me, collect your physical media, because when you get the disc of Mystery Men, you're going to get those missing scenes that really just fill out the characters. You get to see their jobs, you get to see their spouses, you get to see so much more. And that's where I say missed opportunities once again in the edit.
But like this, this film was already 2 hours long. So you wonder, like, how much did they have that they had to get it down to just that workable amount of time?
Yep. Like any film, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, what do you sacrifice? Set pieces and action for character arc? I mean, you really gotta, do you really need to weigh that? Because even the missing scenes are comedy bits that are relevant to the story.
Yeah.
So I say poor choices editing wise.
Yeah. They don't call it killing your babies for nothing.
I will also say, though, that there are a lot of nice little Easter eggs in here for comic book fans, and it should have been marketed as a comedy for comic book fans, or something like that. Because, for instance, when Mr. Furious jumps off the balcony and they do the Incredible Hulk sound effect,
no, it's the Bionic Man sound effect.
Oh yeah, Bionic Man. I was falling out of my chair laughing my ass off in the theater. I was just dying.
And he's trying to do the Hulk thing on the roof of the car.
Yes,
right.
And he's doing the least amount of damage to the car out of all the team, right? My favorite little gag, actually, it's a subtle little gag if you don't know who this guy is, but Mr. Captain Amazing's agent is played by magician Ricky Jay. And when he's, fussing about he's losing endorsements, it's like, look, I can only do so much. I'm not a magician. And I just busted out laughing just because I know some stuff about magicians.
Yeah, I'm a publicist, not a magician.
There are a ton of
made by a magician.
Here.
It was made by a wizard.
And I kind of want to hit as many as possible. So I'm going to kind of go in groups of 3 and go around the horn, and we'll try and do this quickly. Real quick for the plot of the movie, for you all know. So the original 3 of the group, the Mystery Men, is William H. Macy as the Shoveler, Ben Stiller as Mr. Furious, and then Hank Azaria as the Blue Raja. And it opens up with them failing to take down a group of bandits called the Red Eyes, and Greg Kinnear's Mr. Fantastic comes in to save them. Quick note for all of you Howard Stern fans, Artie Lang is the leader of the Red Eyes in this movie.
Okay. So, I knew that voice sounded familiar.
Yeah. And so, and they're kind of the loser group, the posers, the wannabes, and they've been at this for a long time. And eventually Mr. Fantastic has this convoluted plot.
Captain Amazing.
Mr. Fantastic. Captain Amazing. He's losing sponsors because he's put all of his enemies in jail or they're dead. And so he releases one of his greatest foes, Casanova Frankenstein. And Casanova Frankenstein ends up capturing Captain Amazing, and then the Mystery Men end up killing him inadvertently, and then they have to save the city, and they come together as a group and get some non-lethal weapons, and that whole part was fantastic as well, where they get the weapons. Yep.
Mhm.
And they end up saving the day, and there's a lot more in there, but that's the basic plot of the film. But the characters, I think, are what really makes this film special. And so we're going to go around the horn, and I'm going to go groups of three, and we'll just talk about them and try and get through them as quickly as we can. So I'm going to start off with the original Mystery Men first. So let's go with William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, and Ben Stiller. And I'm going to kick it over to Lance to start with on this one. So,
well, I think it's a three-way toss-up about who is the pillar. You know what I mean? Who's actually holding them up? I mean, I think all three of them do. Without one, you can't have the other, and it had been established even within the film itself. But they're the Three Musketeers of the group. They're the guys that have vision. They kind of want to take it a step farther. They're the ones that are trying to organize. They're the ones that are trying to say, hey, let's make this legit, with all the problems that they have. The shoveler, his wife wanting to leave him because it's just too much. Furious, who's his own enemy. He's just his own enemy. He just can't. Nobody does like him. Nobody likes him because he's a jerk. And then you go to the Blue Raja, living with his mom, who's Mary Hartman. Did anybody catch that? Mary Hartman.
Oh no, Mary Hartman
from the 70s.
And what was the name of the woman at the junkyard? Because I recognize her from stuff, but she's hilarious too.
I forgot who she was. Yeah, but
yeah, scrap it.
Yeah, scrap it and junk it.
Yeah.
So I mean, these guys, they were the team, and I love the way they held it together. And I think that, once again, going back to the deleted scenes where we actually you get to see Mr. Furious at his job. It's at a scrap yard. I mean, originally he's a repo man, but scrapyard works just as well for his attitude. And you get to see the Blue Raja at a department store and the home goods section selling silverware and dishes, which is a great character to his arc that I think was missed in the film. And then you actually see the shoveler at his job shoveling. You know what I mean? I mean, you get a sense that these guys really don't have extra time on their hands. You know what I mean? They're really trying. They're working overtime to try and be something and do something proactive to the city. They're those guys that will do that public announcement commercial to try to, without endorsement. But I mean, they're all hilarious. I mean, they all play their parts perfectly. You can't, in my mind now, it's like if they ever made a Mr. Furious movie, oh, you mean it's not going to be Ben Stiller? It is like a Christopher Reeve thing. It's like, no, these guys got it. They are the characters. They own it. So, I mean, they're it. They hold that movie together. That's a rare thing to happen with three performers in one film. I mean, not since like It's a Mad World have I seen such an ensemble cast.
That's
work.
another great movie.
So this, although not in the perfect cinematic realm as It's a Mad World, still has that character aspect which kind of goes there. And that's my loose comparison of how these guys held the film together. I mean, just awesome. Brilliantly.
All right, so I'm going to take another three. I'm going to go over to Jeff. So I am going to give you the next rung and the Mystery Man. So I'm going to give you Janine Garofalo as the Bowler, Kai Mitchell as Invisible Boy, and Paul Reubens as the Spleen.
Okay, I do want to add something to Lance's part because he's talking about how integral those three actors are. And what's interesting is the shoveler was initially a character that's going to be played by Danny DeVito, if you can imagine that. But I can't picture anybody else but William H. Macy doing it now. That beautiful, humble performance he gave. And Ben Stiller had been tapped to play the Blue Raja, but after Something About Mary, he didn't want to play another nerd. So he wanted to play Mr. Furious. And so that's how that whole thing worked out. And thankfully, it was magic. But now on to these three. Now, Janine Garofalo as the Bowler. She's very much kind of playing Janine Garofalo for me. It's a character I've seen her do a million times. She's actually one who got Stiller involved. He had passed on the project. but they're really good friends. They'd worked together for a long time on his own show, and this was still during a period of time where I did still like Janine Garofalo. She was still kind of fun. Her comedy is still kind of fun before she just went way off the deep end with all of her stuff and just became really unfunny. I still enjoyed her at this point. I was enjoying her helming her own movies, her own little romantic comedies, which I thought were a lot of fun. So I was like, okay, Janine and Ben just fit together like peanut butter and jelly. Like they have that kind of groove, that sort of long-standing relationship, and it's just perfect. So, them having their little ad-lib interactions worked out fine. But she wasn't anything special. She was just kind of being Janine. I did like the little twist of her father's head being in the bowling ball. And my favorite part about that whole bit is after she kills the guy who has killed her father, she goes like, okay, now I'm going back to graduate school. That was the deal. I thought that was hilarious. The whole reason for being a superhero has accomplished. And I was like, can I get back on with my own life now? It's like she's being haunted by her dead dad in a bowling ball because he was the original bowler. So that was a nifty kind of little twist, I thought, for the character. And she plays it well for what she's doing. Now, Invisible Boy, I really dig this character because this is kind of like Spider-Man in the MCU movies that we have now. Like, this is the kid who's just full of hope and possibility, and he's got stars in his eyes, and he wants to be something more, something better. He's excited to do something for the world, and he is so sincere. If the shoveler is like the foundation or the backbone of the group, this guy is like the beating heart of it. Like, he's going to be. These other guys have been at it for a long time, but like he's coming in, he's the fresh, new, exciting, stimulating lifeblood of the party. And I just thought, the kid from Good Burger, he plays this so well. He's so he's just like innocent and like, I'm getting ready to get into this whole dangerous world, but I really want to get in there and I want to do something good. And I totally bought into it. I did not disbelieve his performance for a second. But now we've got to get into the man that we are all here to pay tribute to once again, the amazing Paul Reubens, who plays the most un-Pee Wee Herman-like character he can possibly play. Now, it's funny, in the comics, the spleen is a coward, and we do see that a bit at the end. So, personality-wise, he doesn't remind me of the spleen so much in the comics. And, they do a lot of changes. These guys have some actual superpowers, some of the people in the comics had superpowers, others didn't, and they play into that here. But the spleen here I found very interesting. I couldn't help but wonder if like the gypsy cursed him with all those pimple boils on his face, the horrific teeth, which must have really helped him start to talk like this all the time. He's like, "Are you sure you don't like?" There's not enough beer in the world, spleen. Not enough beer in the world. And,
I'll stand next to you, but I'm not going to stand behind you.
Yeah. Hey, there's so many great.
The thing I found was funny, and the one moment I really loved with him was when the skunk decides to thump his leg.
And he's disgusted. He's horrified.
Let's go with it.
Yeah.
It's like flatulence is not a bodily fluid. Like, that's a bridge too far. But there's, when you're cursed with super flatulence and bad skin and bad teeth, and the dude just goes for it. He just he hits on all the ladies because why not? He's got nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose. He kind of reminds me of Kite Man from the Harley Quinn animated series. Like, the guy just kind of lives in his own world where he's the star, and I kind of appreciate that out of it. So like the spleen is another character who like he should be a supervillain. Everything about this guy, like, oh, I've got the most wretched superpower. But he still wants to get out there and do the right thing. And his power is actually really, if you'll pardon the pun, it's really stinking effective. And so it kind of makes him one of the heavy hitters of the team.
He gets to blow one in Jeffrey Rush's face. I mean,
so you really got to hand it to the spleen. So like I
honestly thought he was the one who beat that, who sent back the Disco Boys when they cornered them in the alley.
Yeah. Hey, and just imagining like having to do that third like that's like I've got the retainer in my mouth voice the whole time. It's like that would have driven me crazy. But Paul Reubens is a pro, and from what I hear, every time the cameras weren't on him, he's off camera just trying to make the other actors laugh because that's Paul Reubens for you.
Well, I love that he is also doing, wearing the clothes that he's wearing and the platform shoes and
there were
whole
so
thing,
many platform shoes. Even if you weren't part of the Disco Boys, like Janine Garofalo, him, like platform shoes all over the place.
Right.
All right, real quick before we get to the next set of characters, Mike says, how do you balance running time concerns with pacing, relevance, character world building, and story and editing? Especially with good luck. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's Lance, but that's a good question.
It's this is I don't know who the boss was on this project. It boils down to probably an executive saying this is how the edit's going to be. They had the material once again, I think, to have a better edit, a more revealing edit with more character arcs, but it landed on the editing room floor. So I'm going to say this is probably a universal executive decision than it was a directorial decision.
I was about to say, because producers, we know Mike Richardson, but there's also Lawrence Gordon and Lloyd Levin. If that means anything.
Right. So I'm going to go into Steve now, and you're going to get some of my favorite people in this movie, but we're going in order here. So you're going to get talk about Jeffrey Rush as Casanova Frankenstein, Greg Kinnear as Lance Hunt / Captain Amazing, and Wes Studi as the Sphinx. So,
yeah, I will agree. These are three of the best people in the movie. Greg Kinnear was somebody that I really had started noticing, during the 90s as he started growing. I think it was like as good as it
ETV? Were you watching him on the Entertainment Network at the time?
I may have been. I don't remember.
That's where I first caught him.
Talk Soup?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that was it. That's where I remember him from. Yep. So, yeah, this was a guy that I always thought, was somebody who definitely had a presence on camera. And he just got better and better since then. And he definitely shows that here. And the thing I love about his character, and I was saying this a little bit before we went on, is how the Captain Amazing character is basically what the world thinks that Booster Gold is from the DC universe. Yeah. He is this arrogant, egotistical guy who's only about his own image and his own publicity, and he doesn't care about anybody else. And he's got his suit, with all these sponsors like Booster Gold does in 52. I just thought that it was absolutely great. And the way that Kinnear plays it is just so perfect. He looks like that guy, like if he started to smile, the smile, the pearly whites would start shining.
Yeah.
He's that kind of guy. And it just comes across really, really well. He plays it perfectly. Jeffrey Rush is one of those that I'm really more kind of looking at it at hindsight because I loved him as Captain Barbossa in the Pirates movies. And, I liked him in various other movies, The King's Speech, various other things. But here you can kind of see okay, this is where he started really becoming a villain actor. And, and I just find it funny that you have the trope of the British actor playing the German villain. And it just works. But the thing is that, this is definitely a villain that has the charisma and the presence and the intelligence to be convincing as a master villain. He is that guy that is very, very captivating. And you just want to see what he does next because he's just so darn interesting. And a lot of it is also, throwing together names like Casanova Frankenstein. That sounds something that is incredibly Silver Agey and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And yet it
fantastic.
Works. Yeah. It absolutely works. He is this mad scientist, who dresses up in these Hugh Hefner type of robes. And it's just a great combination. It's just so offbeat and it's so good. And Jeffrey Rush absolutely is commanding in the role at every moment in that.
What I like, though, to add to that real quick, is that even down to his toenails, which were painted gold, he had a pedicure and gold toenails for just that one close-up of him taking
off the shoes.
I mean, that's lit. They're pulling focus. They're doing all this for that one shot. And I remember in the movie theater, that got a gigantic laugh.
I just love when he was taking off all of the stuff on his hands when he was talking to Captain Amazing. It's like, yes, I knew you would do that, and I knew you would do that. and going back and forth with him on that. I thought that was brilliant.
I have to also say, before you get to Wes Studi, in hindsight, it's a little eerie to me that I'm watching Jeffrey Rush in this movie and getting Jack Sparrow vibes a little bit as well from Casanova Frankenstein. So I'm like,
I think
did Johnny Depp watch this at all?
I don't remember I think it was Quills. If you want to see something else interesting like this, check out his film Quills, where he plays the Marquis de Sade.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's a weird flick, but
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Back to you, Steve, and Wes Studi. So.
Yeah, Wes Studi. Bean is trying to go in the kitchen and okay, he's okay now. But yeah, Wes Studi. Yeah, this was the guy who I mainly knew from Last of the Mohicans. I mean, he was just really good in that role. Just a really strong villain. And here, I just like how he just really kind of embraces this role of this very cryptic mentor figure. And I just keep getting Jedi Master vibes from him in the sense that, he talks in riddles. But the way that they play him here is like he talks nonsense, and yet it leads the heroes inadvertently to go and find out the things that they're supposed to do. Oh yes, you need to get weapons, and it's just like, oh yeah, I happen to know a weapons designer who makes non-lethal weapons. Yeah, and things like that. He's completely ridiculous as much as the other ones are, but the way Studi plays it is so straight that the ridiculousness makes it funnier. Mm-hmm. And so I really dug that. And I like the minute that he shows up, it immediately starts a pissing match with Mr. Furious, and then you kind of realize, oh yeah, he's not meant to be the leader like he thinks he is. He's really the loner, the Wolverine, that kind of character who's on the outside. And he thinks he should be Cyclops, and he's not. And that's what's so great about it, because when you have that character coming in, it just works perfectly.
What I love about those two is how everybody's trying to talk some sense into Mr. Furious, and he can't see it. He can't see it. He can never see his own flaws, but he immediately catches on to the Sphinx's bullshit, and nobody else is like, they're like, oh, wise master, and he's like, dude, he just says one thing and he turns it around,
right. And the edit that was missed. Now, they talk about the Sphinx, the guy from down south. Supposedly he can, cut weapons in half with his mind and all this. They're building him up, and then when he actually rescues him, it's an out of the blue edit. You know what I mean? The missing scene is if you go to the taco shop where he moonlights as a busboy, you have to order the right combination off the menu in order to get his attention. So the major three go down there, Macy, Furious, Raja, Shoveler, and they're ordering everything off the menu. Let's try the chimichanga with rice. Let's do that. I mean, they're sitting there stuffing themselves, and they're like, okay, he's not going to come. This is a waste of our time, and they're getting indigestion, and they get up to leave. And you have Wes Studi come to clean the table, and he looks at the combination. That's a missed edit. That's a missed opportunity, because then it makes sense why he shows up. So, but his reaction looking at the food left on the table was like, okay, he has the little paper hat on. It's great. Like, they missed another opportunity there, because it would have worked perfect in the edit, and it's only like a 2-minute scene. So. Yeah, Steve's right. He nailed it. And just as his presence as a busboy, he nails it. He says nothing. All he does is look at dirty plates. And charisma. Once you have that, you can't deny that.
Now, one of the things I like about all of the 9 characters that you just talked about is that each of them is a comic book trope. And it was written not to make fun of the trope, but to put a spotlight on it. Even to the point where Blue Raja is that kind of comic book hero who loves to do the one-liner quips, and he's at home practicing them, trying to figure them out. It's great, because now you're imagining that Peter Parker is practicing his quips, when he's doing stuff and everything. So same thing with, Mr. Furious. Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Mr. Furious is a trope. The Shoveler is a stand-in for Captain America. I mean, that's really who he is, and on and on and on. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the supporting characters real quick. and I think that we're talking about. So first, I'm going to talk about Monica, played by Claire
Can I ask
Forlani.
you? Can I interject one thing real quick?
Sure.
Since you were talking about tropes, one thing that I didn't really think about until rewatching the film now is there's another really neat thing going on here, because one of the big tropes of superhero books is you have the billionaire hero.
Fair.
Yeah,
Fair.
he's got the mustache going. You've got the billionaire hero. You're Tony Stark, you're Batman, and that's like Lance, aka Captain Amazing, is the billionaire hero. But the guys who are going to save the day are the literal street level guys, and all these guys have blue collar jobs. They are the grunts of society, the backbone that makes everything work, and they end up being the ones who save the day. And I love that flipping of that whole paradigm.
And a couple of them actually do have powers. That's the crazy part. So I mean, Invisible Boy, as funny as it is, actually can turn invisible. He has powers. I'd say Blue Roger probably has some sort of powers, like Hawkeye level powers or something. It's pretty
Bullseye
crazy.
type abilities.
So,
Yeah. Super aim.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty good, and they're playing with it, and I think they're doing a good job playing with it. And I don't want to crap on modern superhero stuff, but the people who wrote this, I think at least had some inkling of what happens in comics, and so could write.
Yeah.
Well, they
I think that came through in one scene that I kind of forgot to highlight with Captain Amazing, and that was like where they really comment on how he wears glasses in his secret identity. And I'm just like, yeah, they're absolutely making fun of the whole Superman wearing glasses thing, but they kind of twisting on his head. Well, how would we be able to see without glasses?
And I love to pick up.
Takes them off.
You got he wouldn't be able to see, And I love to pick the callback to that scene where the shoveler is like holding up those two little rings, and you're like,
and he's totally shocked to find out that he is Lance Hunt. I just
yeah,
great.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And
I
even
was
though
just kidding.
They're having some fun with comic book tropes, they're laughing with us, not laughing at us.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
And that's the thing about having Mike.
That was the thing that I was wrong about, and what I think turned me off in the movie originally, because I thought they were laughing at us rather than laughing with the tropes. And
but you didn't know it was being produced by a guy who ran Dark Horse Comics or the creator.
No, I didn't. If I did, I would have seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, getting to three supporting characters. So like I said, Monica, played by Claire Forlani. I think Claire Forlani is a talented actress. I think she's a little bit wasted in this role, but that said, I think she's good in this role. I just wish there was more there, because she's got such range, and there was more she could have done with Mr. Furious. But I just don't think there was time. But what scenes she gets, I think she's very good in it, and she is, surprisingly enough, even though the Sphinx is supposed to be the wise one, she is the grounding board, the sounding board for Mr. Furious. Right. She's the one that sets him on the right path. So, I think she's really good in that role. Next, I'm going to jump over one, because I'm going to do this last guy last, because I love him in this movie. But Tom Waits as Doc Heller is fantastic. He is the tinkerer, but not a villain. He is absolutely great as the mad scientist who's coming up with these incredible Silver Age type weapons, which I actually want to see in the comics. Some of them are absolutely amazing. And
Tornado
the gags
in a can, that's great.
Yeah,
the mad scientist who likes to pick up G-MILFs, as they said on Metalocalypse.
He is the Q of the comic book. He's Q of Flaming Carrot. He built the Eternal Flame, and he outfitted the Flaming Carrot. I mean, Flaming Carrot has a nose that you open it up, and if you put somebody's evidence in there, it'll sniff you out. I mean, he has the atomic pogo stick. I mean, the list goes on.
Even with I forget what the name of the gang was, with the women who are all into fashion and everything, but they hit them with the clothes shrink ray,
the shrink wrap.
It's just fantastic, And then
Shoveler looking away because he's married.
But he's not looking away. It's like, and then Mr. Furious, I think my pants are tight now. It's like, everybody's are. And then finally, I'm going to go to this guy. I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff, but I will have to say that Eddie Izzard as Tony C is one of my favorite in this movie. He is absolutely fantastic. he is so kitschy in this movie and so over the top 70s disco in this movie that I was rooting for him a little bit, even though he's a bad guy. I mean, next to Casanova Frankenstein, he is my favorite villain in the movie. And anybody who could sit there and be like doing the thing with the disco.
You know what Lance was saying earlier about having that charisma. Eddie Izzard exudes charisma. I haven't seen him in a role on the big screen or the small screen that I didn't like him in.
Yeah. And
he's one of those comedians who, like, I don't necessarily like him personally, but I love his work.
Yeah.
He's just a magnetic performer. You can't take your eyes off him.
He's good.
But I will tell you, I was just in love with this character as a villain. The minute he was just like, disco will never die, and then he's in the disco room doing disco.
And he kind of got to replay this character in a little way again with my super ex-girlfriend playing a comic book trophy girl supervillain.
Yeah. So I mean, and these are just the supporting characters, and each of them has relatively small parts, and they are established actors and actresses, and they're fantastic. So this goes to Lance's point, which is the ensemble for this movie is amazing, and it's just so unfortunate that no one went to see it. No one went to see the film. So
missed on the way he says, like, baby bowler.
Yeah,
I'm the one that gave your daddy the shaft.
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Some great kitschy villain dialogue.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time on the characters, but I think this is really a character-driven movie. I do want to talk real quick, and I'm going to start with Jeff and go around the horn. I want to talk about aspects of the production because things that they went into, and I'm going to go to each of you in turn, and I'm just going to give you a shotgun, and I want you to talk a little bit about this. Now, Lance, I'm going to talk about photography with you, so think about that. Steve, I want you to think about costume design. And Jeff, I'm going to go with you because I think there's some stuff to talk about here. Fight choreography in the movie. So
okay. I got to say, whoever coached William H. Macy on fighting with a shovel is a genius. I'm watching that, and it is a combination of kung fu theater and stuff I can believe in. And, I actually, watching the film, I kept rewinding the scenes to watch him flip and twirl.
I got to interject real quick. This was the same guy who made this seem actually dangerous. So that's all I'm going to say. So.
And, it's so great because you've got the finger with the nail, and I love how they've got like a giant prop in front of the camera. So, you get that great fingernail view. But I'll get into all that as well. So, William H. Macy, he clearly worked very hard. It kind of reminded me when Jim Carrey learned how to twirl canes for the Batman movie. I saw similar sorts of movements and training going on in there. And he was really, really competent with it. And, a shovel is not balanced for these sorts of movements. So he must have really practiced, and he does it well. And I love the creativity of doing things like, hooking the handle of the shovel onto a protrusion so he can swing and catch somebody with both feet. And I cheered when he loses his shovel and he pulls out a little garden trowel. I was like, yes, a tiny shovel. The Sphinx told him to use more than just one shovel, and he's got more stuff going on. And so it's some really, really clever stuff, and I have to keep that going. Another person who obviously yes, indeed. Another person who trained really hard was Hank Azaria, manipulating these forks like drumsticks, and he was really, really good at it. And it's that sort of work in detail that makes even a parody movie, it gives it that grounding, that believability. Okay, if these guys can actually do this, I can believe these schmoes can actually be superheroes because they're doing stuff the rest of us can't do. And we know that the Shoveler's been doing this for 12 years, and they've all been probably hanging out for the same amount of time, and they've really put in the work. Like Lance said, these guys never take a day off. And I love how that is built into the DNA of their characters here. We see the training because when they first jump out on the Red Eyes, they actually start off pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, the forks are flying, shovels are swinging. Mr. Furious has actually got some pretty decent boxing skills before he starts getting too cocky. And then later on, when he actually activates full-on furiousness, we get to see that he really can fight, and he really does have some superhuman strength. And he just uses it so well. And the fact that they thought, because when you first see Captain of Frankenstein, he's got all these long, dangerous nails, very Fu Manchu, and you think he's going to end up using them, but he cuts them all off except for his coke nail, right? And
Right.
he leaves the steel coke nail on there. And I did not expect that to come into play like that. And once again, there's this level of absurdity of somebody fighting you with their pinky fingernail. And yet I bought into it because of the way that it was filmed and the choreography behind it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Let's see. Mike asked, any thoughts on actual costume heroes like Phoenix Jones? Anyone want to take that one? So, I'm not sure who Phoenix Jones is. So,
I
that's
gotta
not lost on that one.
yeah,
I don't know who Phoenix Jones is, but I did like when they were having the superhero tryouts. Out of all the various characters who had like all these piecemeal
I think
costumes,
he's
like
talking about
Dane
like real
Cook
life
is the
superheroes. People that actually go out in the real world and
Oh, okay, that kind of, I actually think I think those guys are pretty cool. They're like a more fanciful version of Tony Suela's Guardian Angels from back in the day. They just wear a suit and they're bringing awareness, and they don't try and do anything stupid. Most of them. There are some who engage very physically, and things are probably going to go poorly one day.
yeah,
But yeah, like I like the idea of like being that kind of stand-up character and giving people a positive role model. But back to like you've got the ridiculous costumes like Dane Cook as the Waffler,
yeah.
but then there was a dude like with this bucket head sort of thing going on, and he was a full-on accurate translation from the comics. I don't remember what the character's name was, but 100% accurate. Had the shorts on the outside, had the symbol, the cape, the whole deal. I was like, whoa, look at that. Talk about stepping off the page.
I love PMS Girl who only works 4 days a week.
4 days a month.
Yeah,
PMS Avenger. Yeah. You got a problem with that?
You got a problem with that?
No. All right. Steve, I'm going to go over to you for costuming, and let's do.
Sorry, one quick thing. Just because of the 70s theme that was so strong in the movie, good on them for like having so much kung fu, because that was so big in the 70s.
Yeah, and not only that,
Black Belt Jones style.
Each of the gangs had their own fighting style as well, so I thought that was pretty good. Steve, over to you for costuming, and talk a little bit about props as well. And then Lance, I'm going to go photography, and I also want you to talk about set design and stuff on the movie as well. So
okay. Yeah, I will say as far as the costumes go, I really like the grounded sort of flavor that they gave the costumes initially. Mr. Furious always wearing his leather jacket and just stuff you wear off the street. Blue Raja just is putting on like drapes that he just threw together and sewed together. It all looks ridiculous. I mean, the shoveler initially, all he's just doing is probably wearing stuff that he wears to work. It just looks like bargain basement superheroes.
Like wearing his kid's
really works. Yeah, it really works. And then eventually, you start seeing them get better costumes later once they team up with the weapons designer, and then you start seeing things that are more upgraded, more proper superhero versions of those costumes, and that's a really nice ensemble. I also like the way that the villains have their own style. They're all goofy and a bit over the top, but it really works. Casanova Frankenstein with the Hugh Hefner type of outfits. I just thought that's just absolutely great. I love the little gold claws and rings all over the place. I think those are just some really nice accents. It really looks good. I love Jeffrey Rush's hair. It's just perfectly coiffed.
Gene Simmons
it looks like
ponytail.
Luke Rowe did some work on him. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. But what the hell was this psychiatrist wearing when she shows up at the house? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, you have the Disco Boys. You have all these different characters that wearing all these ridiculous things. These women that are dressed like go-go dancers.
Yeah.
All of these the frat boys. I think it's genius that Michael Bay was the head of the frat boys, because that is exactly his persona. It is perfect casting. So all of that kind of stuff, it's meant for humor, but they get these unique styles that fit the characters, that fit what they're doing with them, and it's great. And I will say, like you, I really like Champion City in the way that it looks. You like the little things that they set up here and there. You have the diner, the 50s style diner. You have outside these neon lights, and you have the Captain Amazing posters all over the place. Things that make the world feel lived in as well. Mm-hmm. So all these the people that are working on the physical props and on all the costumes, they clearly did their homework, and they gave it a visually distinct look. And I think that it worked for the movie that they were making.
And I think it's also kind of an amalgam of, you look back at the Wanderers, the different kind of gangs in this. I mean, you can go back as far as.
Oh, how about the Warriors? I mean, because he even does, like, "Can you dig it?" He even did that line.
Can you dig it? Which I was going to get at. I mean,
I was thinking of the Droogs as well from A Clockwork Orange. Mm-hmm. That kind of style.
Heavily costume,
yeah, great stuff. I mean, and if you really want to go back that far, and I know you don't like musicals, but you could even go to the Sharks and the Jets from West Side Story. So,
absolutely.
So Lance, talk to us a little bit about photography, but talk to us about set design as well, because I think that a lot of the sets, they were very elaborate, and I thought they were very well done, but I'm curious to see what you thought of it and how well they were done for photography as well, because I think that's an art to make a set that can work to shoot on as well. So how did that all translate for you?
Well, I think it worked out pretty dang well. The production design was, I think, spot on. And one thing that I really liked that they didn't do is, you always have the director wanting to do his Blade Runner shot with it raining and the neon lights. The shot is just so overplayed now, it's annoying. They didn't do that at all. They kept it straight. They just kept the production design the way it was supposed to be. I like the 50s diner look, and then you have that really old-fashioned German expressionistic castle, but it still had 70s flair to it. Yeah. It's like, it was ridiculous. You look at all the environments, and I think all the environments work perfectly. Even suburbia with not a real lawn, because they're like in this industrial city.
Yeah, AstroTurf lawn.
It's like, whoa, they thought about it. I think the matte paintings looked fantastic, along with the miniatures, which is, practical effects. That it wasn't CGI.
No, they
Was the asylum a miniature that they blew up?
Yeah.
So,
the castle and the insane asylum were miniatures. I mean, see, that's the way you do it. It just looked better. It felt like it was in the world. I mean, even if they recycled sets, which you do in Hollywood, it doesn't matter. I mean, I got a kick out of recognizing sets that were reused in the Stallone Judge Dredd from Blade Runner. I noticed those sets. I was like, hey, you switch the lighting, you paint it. When in doubt, you paint. You don't have to rebuild something. You already have a set right here. Just use it.
Now,
so I like that.
I will say this as well, and I think, and I'm curious to hear all of your comments on this. I think, to their credit, a lot of these movies, especially if you are trying to hide some stuff or trying to pull off that noir vibe, they go dark the whole time. But they weren't afraid to have daylit scenes in this movie.
Absolutely not.
And brightly colored characters. I mean, this is one thing that gets me, particularly with post-2000 sorts of movies, is that everybody's wearing black leather, and we making fun of yellow spandex and people wearing classic costumes. These guys were not just these guys were wearing superhero-y costumes, and they were not afraid to say it in a Tim Burton style setting. I think that was a great contrast.
Now, this was one of the imperatives of the director. He did want it to look like a comic book world, and I think that's why we got the visuals we did.
Yeah, and even, come on, it's the Universal backlot. You have anybody that's been there knows that you can shoot anything there, relight it, reuse it from 100 years ago, and it's going to look great. It becomes your own thing.
Does anybody here? I have to ask the question. The Hunkemer, I think that was the name of it. The battle wagon.
The battle wagon, yeah.
What is? Was that an original for this movie? Is that something from another movie? What was that? So it looked like a VW bus on steroids. That's what it looked like to me, and maybe it was, but that was, if that was an original that they built for this movie, it was fantastic. It was.
I will tell you one other car vehicle was great. Was the Casanova stretch Corvette?
Oh yes, the stretch Corvette was boss, totally boss.
What were we gonna say about the battle wagon, Lance?
I mean, that's their set piece. That's something that was designed for the film, and that's the genius of these fabricators. You have this, turn it into something, and then you cut inside, which is a studio, which is just great. That's the beauty of movie magic. So the production design was spot on. I mean, even the back lot where they were practicing with the Sphinx is basically the Gilligan's Island set. I mean, it's your Universal Studios. To have that at your disposal, awesome. Photography wise, I do have a lot of problems with how it was shot. There are times where it's pretty amateurish, and I think it goes to, it's a pet peeve of mine, and it goes to the director of photography, and the script continuity person. There's no excuse for breaking the 180. There's no excuse for high lines going everywhere. On a big budget film like that, I do not forgive it. Because guess what? If we're working hard on the independent level to make it look perfectly composed, you guys have all the army you need to do it at $66 million. I mean, and at times, audiences know it's wrong, and it can suck them out of the comedy. If you notice the technology, it ruins the story experience. I mean, I think it was awesome when they first met Invisible Boy. I'm going to my room with three strange men, Dad. And then you go into his room and you got this weird overhead shot with everybody showing. And then it cuts to a low angle up everybody's nose. And then when he goes against the door, it was like everybody was looking screen right. They have the camera right on top of Invisible Boy, and he's looking in all directions doing his pleading, and it just is like, he's acting here. Guys, put the camera in the right place.
Do you think maybe he was trying to emulate comic book panels for some of those shots, and that was the problem?
I think the comic book panels are more composed to left and right. I think they just follow the comic book, if that's the case.
I know, like, for people who know comic books, like, you have a Z formation that you follow. That's how that sort of works, but it reminds me of, like, people going like, "Oh, this will be a cool shot. This will be a cool angle. This will be a cool angle. This will be a cool angle."
Therein lies the problem of, do you want a cool shot, or does the shot propel the story forward? Now, I've been through this a lot with people. Like, dude, your edit is a little long. That shot you really don't need, but it's a cool shot. Okay, you got a cool shot, but what does it do for your project? And if you don't need it, get rid of it.
You need flow too. You need
flow. And there is behind the scene footage with William H. Macy as a professional asking the director, "Well, where am I looking? Who am I looking at over here?" And then he's like, "Well, the Sphinx is supposed to be here, and so is supposed to be here." So if you didn't have your topographical map, or you're not following your storyboards, which I'm sure they had, you're misleading your performers.
Well, it sounds like he didn't do any blocking.
That's a directorial problem. In the old days,
showing.
Yeah, in the old days, the director blocked, and the director of photography, the cinematographer, composed. It was a team effort, and the director checked the shot. In the modern age, as a director, you got to know where to put that camera. That is your job. You have to know where that camera drops, and you have to know where everybody is stationed. And I get it. This is a big ensemble piece, but I'm sorry. So is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and it's perfect. I'm sorry. You dropped the ball. Like, if I'm looking at this as a resume piece, I would not hire that director. I would not. I'd be like, yeah, you don't know where to put the camera. You have performances here, and everybody's looking all over the place. And that's even with space on each side of a person. Are you going to be at its center like Kubrick does? Or are you going to give a little space left and right so you give people an area to look at? I mean, this movie just is nuts with these mistakes, and it drives me crazy when I watch it. That's the only thing that sucks me out, but still I like the movie and watch it. So photography-wise, aside from the great film stock, the great cameras, the great lenses, that's why I say I feel this was poorly directed.
Okay, I see what you're
All
talking about now, because like
Yeah.
there's a lot of shots, and I think what I liked about the shooting was this guy knew how to shoot the set pieces, like the action stuff, because I thought all of that was shot very well. But now
Should have been
reflecting,
second unit.
well,
You know,
that's true.
could have been second unit. He's got to do principal photography, and then second unit comes in, was probably more experienced because it worked. I mean,
Okay.
you know, that's how the big budget pictures work. When you see the action sequences, usually that's second unit, not principal photography. Director's doing principal photography, all the actors. So that's one horrific thing in a big budget movie that horrifies me. I don't want a second unit director. I know every shot of the film, but guess what?
Like if it was me, I would want to shoot my own action. But you know, I've
It's-
studied how actions
Right,
supposed to be shot.
and theoretically, if you have control of your movie, you should.
Yeah.
So, production-wise, that's the aside from the missed opportunities of the edit and the photography of it. To me, I don't think it helped the movie. It made it look a little amateurish.
Amateurish, yeah, I was going to say that. Those are all really great points, and so it just goes to show you that, you know, they get so much right here, but it has its technical flaws. Even with that, though, I still think this movie deserved a lot better than it got. I think that's fair to say. So, okay.
Well, we did talk about the time it was coming out. There was just a year of all kinds of movies, and then like the Batman stuff was going down. It was going campy, and so it didn't make this special anymore.
They delayed
this could have been
movie,
special.
They delayed the movie 1 week for the Blair Witch Project, but I remember the summer of 99, and the Blair Witch Project. That movie stole all of the oxygen out of everything for.
And let's think about
at least
what brought superhero movies back. After we'd had several years of camp and parodies, you know, like Meteor Man, the Batman movies, Blade pops out in 99 and reminds us that superhero movies can be kick-ass again.
That's absolutely true. So, all right, we have gone a little over, but this was a great discussion as always. We could probably talk another couple hours. I am going to tell everybody we're going to do something a little different for the rest of September and August. We are going to select a movie with an actor from the previous or actress from the previous movie we talked about to talk about. Now, I told these guys that I was going to go with Hank Azaria in Birdcage. But after talking to everybody and listening to everybody and talk about different people, I want to go do something with Jeffrey Rush. Now, I'm not going to do Pirates of the Caribbean because everybody knows that. I'm going to go with a movie that I like, and I'm curious what everyone else is going to say when they watch it. I want to go with a movie from a year before this, Elizabeth, starring Cate Blanchett, and Jeffrey Rush plays her spy master.
Haven't seen that one yet.
Walsingham, yes, I remember.
Yeah. So he is very good as a villain in that movie. So I'm curious to see what you think. So we will do Elizabeth next week. And then Lance will be able to choose from the cast of that movie for our next film. And we will go around the horn like that. So we're going to be doing that for the next several weeks. So with that, I want to thank all of my co-hosts. Thank you so much, Lance.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And I will say it was nice discovering this movie. Every so often, you know, I end up being the one that ends up finding these movies for the first time. And I always get a kick out of some of them. So, yeah.
That's why we're here. That's why we do this.
Steve has had better things to do than sit on his butt, watch movie after movie after movie.
Yeah.
Yes. And so just a reminder, once again, next week we'll be covering Elizabeth, starring Cate Blanchett, Jeffrey Rush,
which I have
Jay Fiennes, I think, among many others. It's a good one. Eric Cantona is in the movie. So the soccer player plays the French ambassador in the movie, and he's pretty darn good at it. So yes, we'll be watching that. And till next time, make sure you keep your popcorn warm, get into your comfy seat, enjoy some movies this weekend, and we'll see you next week on Cinema Crusaders. We're out of here. Bye, everybody.